Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. The topic of my talk is Limitless, and I want to talk about the meaning of life. So let's jump right into it. So how many? I just want to get a rough sense of head count. How many of you think life has a meaning? Raise your hand. Let me see. Life has a meaning. Wow, good, awesome. So for those of you whose hands are not up, you think life doesn't have a meaning. I'm really surprised, pleasantly surprised, because meaning as we know it has been slipping through the fingertips like sand through the history of humans, right? So tonight I want to invite you to go on 2 journeys through time, and let's rediscover the meaning of life. And the first journey starts with archaeology. And at the very beginning, there are 3 nemesis of meaning. And anyone recognize this? Anyone? Varlar Morghulis. You know what that is? No? Did anyone watch Game of Thrones? All men must die. Okay. So the first nemesis of meaning obviously is death. So the question is, how does death remove meaning from life? Well, for one, if someone dies, if we die, eventually we'll be forgotten. Right? Do you know who's the richest man on earth right now? Maybe Bill Gates or maybe Elon Musk, right? You think we all think they're great people. But let me ask you this question: do you know who's the richest person on earth 100 years ago? See, the wealth doesn't get you anywhere, right? So death certainly removes that. Because eventually we'll all be forgotten. And what else? When we talk about what's the point, no matter how much we struggle, no matter how much we suffer, it seems that we all want a happy ending, right? How many happy endings are there in this world? How many? Barely any, right? So death certainly removes meaning of life, because by the end of it, we're all going to die. No matter how rich you are, no matter how powerful you are, even if you're a president, or lives in ghetto, lives on allowance or welfare, it doesn't matter, right? Death removes all of that. And what's the second nemesis of meaning? I think we can get the gist of this picture, right? The theory of what? Evolution, right? The theory of evolution. And why do you think this is, I wouldn't say feared, but rejected by a lot of people, right? Why does evolution remove meaning? If we think, right, a certain deity created us all, it's easy to think we're as special children, right? We are ordained, we are preordained, a holy mission for our lives. And 200 years ago, Sir Charles Darwin found out we are just one but a million species on this planet. We're not special, not by a long shot. So evolution doesn't even have a direction. It just randomly happens. And if that is true, we're screwed. How can anything random have meaning? When you go on a trip with your friends, you say, oh, we're just randomly walking in the city. You don't have a goal, do you? So it seems that evolution, which is completely random, puts us in a spot where meaning is removed from life. The third nemesis, we're thinking, oh, maybe when science progresses. Maybe we're saved. So did science really save us? 100 years ago, when science dawned on us all, what did we learn? What did we learn about? What does cosmology tell us? Well, the sun is going to swallow us all, right? 4 billion years later, the sun is going to turn into a red giant, and the entire Earth's orbit will be in the sun, will be inside the sun. So by that time, we're either going to be gone physically, or gone, we don't live on this Earth anymore. Maybe when the Earth becomes truth, right? So we're either going to be gone or going to be gone. So science doesn't help at all. It's just like, Nietzsche said, God is dead. Because it seems that the entire universe doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. There are so many questions we cannot understand, we cannot answer. Science is not helping with the question, what meaning does life have? Right? Well, I beg to differ. So let's look at let's re-examine those three premises. First question I want to say is, does knowing what the end is that equal to how the end is, or how it ends? Let's look at think about an analogy. I believe we've all bought batteries. Right? You know what happens to batteries eventually? The moment you buy it, you know eventually what's going to happen to them, right? They're going to be depleted. You're going to remove them from your AC controllers or remote or whatever. You're going to throw them in the trash bin. Pardon me for not being environmental there. Right? The moment you buy it from Sam's Club, you know that battery is going to end up in a trash bin at some point. Does it mean you don't buy it? So why buy it? It is the discharging process, it is the fun that it brought us during its lifetime. Yes? It brings us some fun while it lasts. So life is just like that, isn't it? So knowing the end, which is death, does not necessarily take meaning away from life. And as a matter of fact, I want to say this. Do you know, for those of you who watched Game of Thrones, not the little ones, of course, Valar Dohaeris, all men must serve. So life does have a purpose. And I want to say this. When we say death is the end, what is the opposite? What is the antonym of the end? Huh? What is the opposite of the end? The beginning. The beginning. Right? So I want to send this message to all of you who are here today. What is the opposite to death? To death, then? If the end, if the beginning is the opposite of the end, then what is the opposite to death? Birth. Right? Birth is the beginning, which is the opposite to death. Life is not. Life is not the opposite of death, and vice versa. Death is not the opposite of life. Yeah? Life itself is just a process. It is the way. Life is just like the battery discharging. That's what life is. The depleted battery that is ready to be thrown, tossed away, that is not the end of life, right? It has nothing to do with life. So death certainly does not remove meaning from life, because life is the process. What about illusion? You say illusion is random, right? It doesn't have a direction. It doesn't favor, something good or bad, strong or weak. There's no judgment there. Well, maybe a lot of us know that there are rare elements in us, in our human bodies. Iron, magnesium, zinc. Those elements are created by what? by supernova, by stars' death, by star exploding. That is the universal way of creating heavy elements. And those elements, those stardusts, are inside every one of us. Right? That's why our blood is red, because of iron. If that is not special enough, I don't know what is. We don't need to be preordained by some holy deity to be special. We are special already by pure chance that we are happening. Well, physics, which happens to be my major. What about physics? Does physics destroy meaning? Well, not really, right? In one sense, on one hand, it tells us that, the sun is going to devour us all, which is like super not romantic, is horrible, really. But on the other hand, physics also tells us time, as we know it, might not exist. We might be living a movie. Where you are now, where you will be tomorrow, you think you are determining all of that, right? You came here on your free will. Physics begs to differ. We might be living a movie where you, me, everybody around you are just actors. And the world, this world, is a stage. Does that take me away from us? I don't know. I don't think so. We could be living in a myriad of one of the bubbles that are bubble universes. You've watched movies like Spider-Man, right? Multiverse, or Doctor Strange in the multiverse, or Everywhere, all at the same time, right? Those are movies based on physics discoveries and theories that we might be living in a multiverse where every possibility is alive in some universe. In one reality. So does science take meaning away? Well, on one hand, maybe. But on the other hand, it gives us infinitely many possibilities. Okay? So that sums up my first journey through time. The next, I want to talk about a race to South Pole. Okay? I think we all know who's the first man in space, which is some Russian gentleman whose name I cannot pronounce. We all know who was the first man on the moon, right? But do you know? I didn't know who was the first person to reach the South Pole. This actually happened 100 years ago between two gentlemen, one Norwegian and one British, Amundsen and Scott. So they competed against each other to be the first man to reach the South Pole. And here are some, they're here. Okay, on the left, the Norwegian team, they wore animal fur. It's light, it's very insulating, because they learned from the Inuit, the North Pole, polar, Eskimos. The bottom, the Norwegian, you can see the flag there, they used Alaskan dogs to pull their sleds. So they learned from Eskimos, the Inuits, and they are well prepared, right? They use their North Pole experience to guide their competition. The British team, led by gentleman Scott, they wore jackets and sweaters, which are heavier and also less insulating when it gets wet. Right? When you're sweating, you know how horrible and how terrible that is, right? Some wet clothes on your body. And down here, they use ponies. Actually, not ponies, donkeys. They use donkeys as their transfer animal. Okay? Can you guess the result? The thing is, if the story just ends there, sure, someone brought donkeys to South Pole. That sounds ridiculous, but it would be a cliche, right? It's about win or lose, about glory or oblivion, it's about life and death. The thing is, here are two moments that I want you to step into actually Mr. Scott's shoes and imagine you were Mr. Scott who lost the race, right? So there's this huge mountain called Trans-Antarctica Mountains, which is like the first barrier that stood between the two teams and South Pole, right? So they both have to climb that. By the time Mr. Scott, the British team, climbed to the top of the Trans-Antarctica Mountains, the Norwegian team is already at the South Pole. So by the time Scott and his team members got to the top of the mountains, they saw the Norwegian flag flying on the North-South Pole. Okay? Do you get it? They already saw that Amundsen and his Norwegian team, they already won, basically. Here's the question. If you were Mr. Scott, would you kept going? Would you have kept going? You saw the flag from miles, hundreds of miles away, because, Antarctica, there's nothing else, right? There's just ice, frozen world, white world. They can see the flag from like miles away. Would you have kept going? There's a choice, right? You can admit your defeat and just head back, now, then, and there, right? But did he? What about you? He didn't. He kept going. Completely insane. He knew, before reaching the South Pole, he knew he already lost. Yet he still wanted to be there, to see it for himself. And the second choice comes when he actually reached the South Pole, right? He has the Norwegian flag flying, and Mr. Amundsen actually left the British team a tent, with goods and stuff. Here's the second choice. If you were Mr. Scott, you already lost. You are at the South Pole.